The poor work and work. The rich exploit the poor. The soldier protects both. The taxpayer pays for all three. The banker robs all four. The lawyer misleads all five. The doctor bills all six. The goons scare all of the seven. The politician lives happily on account of all eight. And that is by Marcus Cicero, 43 before Christ. Like, it's still valid today. Can you imagine? Hello. And welcome to Tuesday's episode of Toya Talks. My name is Toya Washington, and of course we have a new episode for you each and every Tuesday. If you're new and this is your first time listening to a Toya Talks episode, welcome. Please acquaint yourself with some of the podcast episodes, if not all of them, that have previously been uploaded on the Toya Talks podcast. And also, if you are a returning listener, hello, welcome, and thank you. You know how we do. Listen, I really need to up my vitamin intake. I have been feeling a lot more tired lately, and obviously the clocks are going to go back. It's starting to get later sooner, and a lot of us are working remotely as well. And I definitely need to incorporate just literally taking some fresh air and actually seeing some of the daylight, not just kind of on my balcony, like literally going for walks and stuff, because I am feeling a little tired, and I definitely know that I need to get back on my vitamins and probably just, also as well just drink a lot more water. But listen, this episode is one of the episodes I've been looking forward to delivering, just because obviously I have my own views about feedback and the importance of feedback, because I think in order for you to grow and develop and understand how you are growing and developing, you need constructive criticism. And I feel like, when it comes to interviews and things like that, people always talk about, oh, Toya, you're really good at interviews, and I have an interview masterclass on the toyatalks.com website. And part of the reason, if not most of the reason why I am really good at interviews, and I'll say that with my chest, is because I've had a lot of constructive criticism along the way, along my career journey. But we're going to get into all of that a little later on. So this episode is not sponsored. The podcast is not sponsored. I just want to talk about a particular company because I have a business. I deal with people all the time, and customer service is so important to me, as well as the quality of the products in which I'm purchasing. And there's a company called AfroTouch, and AfroTouch, they do all types of stationery, and it's Black owned, but the type of stationery they do is very African inspired. And the quality is amazing. And I recently purchased from AfroTouch. I got 2 notepads. I bought a card because I'm sending a card to someone just to say thank you. And I bought a planner. And for me, being dyslexic, having a planner is really, really important in terms of my organization. I'm quite a visual person, but they're not any ordinary planners. Like on the planners, they actually have, affirmations that you can write in there, and it's very well created, and you can just tell there's been a lot more attention to detail. AfroTouch does. Oh, sorry, that was my phone. They have an Instagram, AfroTouch Design, and honestly, Black owned, fantastic. I placed an order previously, and it has been lost in the post because the Royal Mail is just mad. And basically I contacted them, and the lady was so amazing. It was the owner of the company. She resent them to me. She could see the tracking number wasn't working with the original order. I hadn't received it, sent it across, and she just dealt with me so well and made sure that I was happy and I'd gotten everything, kept me updated. And the customer service is second to none. Brilliant. The quality of the products are amazing. And my partner's taken some of the stationery that I ordered, and I'm going to order a bit more from them. The prices are really, really reasonable, and also as well, they're Black owned, so make sure you go and check them out. They're called AfroTouch. They're on Instagram, social media. They've got a website as well. Website is very clean, very easy to use, aesthetically beautiful, but more importantly, you're supporting a Black business, so definitely go and check them out. Let them know that Toya sent you if you didn't already know about them. And they actually came recommended to me by somebody, and I really, really enjoyed the user experience of the website, ordered the stuff, and I definitely will be a repeat customer. So, feedback. So we're going to talk also some dilemmas. I'm getting so many dilemmas, first of all, and the dilemmas are listen, you guys, the fact that you even trust me for dilemmas is amazing. And I feel truly blessed that you guys trust me to send them to me, be vulnerable, but also you want to receive, what I'm, going to say and kind of how I'll advise you. You all know that I don't give personal answers to dilemmas. Any dilemma received at hello@toytalks.com will be spoken about here on the podcast, and obviously my views and opinions will be shared too. But yeah, I'm getting loads. Okay, so what I'm now trying to do is, although I will do episodes dedicated specifically just to dilemmas, I will try to incorporate some of those dilemmas into topical podcast episodes that I do, which obviously today is one of them. So that we'll do that a bit later on. Feedback. I definitely feel like, obviously, we talk about how the commercial space has completely changed. There's a lot more people looking for jobs. The furlough scheme is ending in October. There has been a new type of scheme that has opened that is really quite limiting in its accessibility to all. But it's a really difficult time in the market. I have, not sugar-coated it for you guys in previous episodes, especially the last couple of episodes that we've had, or most of the episodes this year actually, about how difficult it is going to be adapting to this new commercial way of working. But also from a recruitment perspective, hiring managers or direct recruitment and agencies, it is really crazy. You've got one job and ordinarily you might get maybe 15 applicants. You're probably now getting 115 applicants. It really is difficult. But you will know, obviously, I'm a contract consultant, commercial contract consultant. I have my limited company. I contract through my limited company, and therefore I work for myself. And I took a bit of a break just to focus on Toy Talks and everything that involved. Obviously, I had the website launch, www.toytalks.com. I had the apparel launch, which sold out in 72 hours. So that was an affirmation collection. And there's been so many things that I've been working on. And I also have another business, Vagina Chronicles, which is completely separate from Toy Talk. So I've been really busy. So I thought it would be quite prudent of me to just take some time out of my actual career and focus on my passion, which is everything that encompasses Toy Talks. So you could say I was taking a bit of a sabbatical, if you like. I think that is more the PC term to use, but always knowing that I'd go back, just because I love what I do. I always talk about how I love my career, and I genuinely do. And my job is as such that you do need to kind of keep, learning, and you have to kind of keep your feet wet, because the legislation changes, the way people contract changes all the time. So I really, really missed it. So I put the feelers out there. I had some really great conversations. I've got a nice preferred recruiter list that I use, who they've been so engaging and such a blessing. And I had quite a few interviews actually. Now, there was this one interview I had, and it's really important that I share this with you because it's very, very pertinent to the topic at hand that we're talking about, which is feedback. So this particular role, I had an initial interview with human resources, and I've told you before, when you have an initial interview with human resources, they don't know the intricate details of the role in which they're recruiting. They are doing more of a conversational interview, getting to know a little bit about you, seeing if you can engage in a conversation and bring parts of your CV to life. It's more about the likability factor, yeah? Had that initial call, fantastic. Company based in London, everyone's remote working, they're looking for a contract consultant, they don't have any contract processes, they're outsourcing all their legal work and therefore being charged an extortionate rate, and therefore they want to bring some of those strategic and critical contracts in-house, and therefore they've realised that they need a specialist to do that, so they want to get a contractor in. So great conversation. So within a couple of days, 24 hours actually, she emailed me back and she says, Toya, I'm going to put you forward, definitely, like your CV's amazing, your lovely personality, what dates are you available, gave the dates, and then I had an interview with the direct hiring manager, who actually is an operations manager, so she has no contract understanding or anything, but has been trying to find her way through. And when it's become difficult, she just outsources it to a barrister's chambers. Can you imagine? Not even a law firm, a barrister's chambers. Anyway, I'm not even getting into that. So I had an interview with her, and it was quite an extensive interview, but it was a good interview. And the reason why I did this interview wasn't necessarily because I actually wanted this particular job. I had a lot of other jobs on the fire, but I will never turn my nose up at an interview. The only way you're going to get really good at interviews is also actually being present, being like going to those interviews. Even if I'm having like 4 or 5 interviews and I'm at different stages, I will always go to an interview. Like I got an email today about an interview and I'm doing it. I'm not going to accept the role, but I need to practice the interviews. I need to practice those initial calls. I need to have those conversations and get my head in the game. Like, what type of questions are these interviewers asking? Like, how are they structuring these interviews, and get used to this remote way of interviewing, which no one is used to. So this operations manager, fantastic interview. Obviously, like, I have a vast amount of experience. You know, some of the issues that they're going through as a business, I've dealt with in certain organizations because of the type of contracts that they specifically look at. That area that they are in is quite niche area, and it's not a lot of people have experience in that area, but I have done in a couple of roles, and therefore I was giving like suggestions and examples of things, and she just really, it was a fantastic interview. Literally 72 hours, I received an email from human resources again saying, Toy, do you mind if I give you a call? So they gave me a call and they said, Toy, we really want you to do a test, and it's a competency-based test, you know, based on basically what you've been doing. We're going to send you a contract to mark up, and we need you to mark it up like you would do from a client and leave comments, you know, in the track changes and stuff. And there's going to be 2 more questions as part of this assignment. So as soon as she called it assignment, my back was up already. But I agreed. I said, no problem, I'll do it. Again, you know, practicing marking up contracts. I mark up contracts for a living. That's my daily bread. Do you understand? So it's important to see how other businesses construct their contracts, draft their contracts. And again, I'm getting that practice in. For me, it's about me. It's not necessarily about, oh, this test, I've got to impress them. That's not how I'm looking at it. I marked up this contract. I added stuff in, and it became really obvious to me as I was going through this contract that it's a live contract. It's live, it's in action. So they're currently negotiating with this particular client, right? And therefore, they've decided, right, we're going to use this as part of an assignment. And maybe we don't necessarily need to use the lawyer or barrister extensively externally. We can utilize this particular or whoever candidate in marking up this contract. And then as part of the assignment, remember I said they had 2 more questions. The second question was, what would you do in your first 30 days? And the third question is, what would you implement in your first 30 days? Now, those questions are very similar, right? So I marked up this contract. I literally spent about 2 hours doing it. No, I'm actually lying. I didn't. I spent an hour and a half doing it. The extra 30 minutes was literally just going over it and making sure. So yeah, I guess I spent in total 2 hours, okay? So then when it came to those 2 questions, I was really irritated because I was like, how would I know what I'm going to do in the first 30 days until I go in and see what the issues are? You don't go into an organisation and change shit. You don't do that. You just go in, you observe what works, what doesn't work, you speak to key stakeholders, you'd even speak to external counsel that they use, or the barrister, lawyer, whatever you want to call them, that they use, to understand what the full holistic picture is of the way this company deals with contracts. So within my first 30 days, I wouldn't do anything. And I wrote it there, and I gave the rationale of not doing anything, because also as well, you can't assume, and I wrote it down, that your experiences and the changes you've implemented in one organisation works in another. You know, the culture's different, the sign-off is different, the business is different, and therefore anything that you want to change or implement has to fit in with that particular organisation. And then the third question of what would I implement, how I decided to approach that is, what are the basic things that every organisation from a contract perspective should have? So they need to have delegated authority, there needs to be some type of sign-off, they need to have a contract summary sheet, they need to have some form of a process flow, and even if you build it over time, there needs to be at least a beginning of one. So I wrote all those things down, okay? Granted, I didn't spend 2 hours on those 2 questions, but those are not two-hour type questions, okay? Those questions are quite redundant, as far as I'm concerned, a complete waste of my time. So I submitted it, sent it all across. I didn't hear anything for like a week. Remember, as that week has passed, I've still got like things on the go. I'm having phone calls. My phone isn't stopping, okay? I'm going for interviews, final stage interviews, offers, and I'm rejecting some of these offers as well if they don't meet certain things. But they then come back to me and the woman says, Toya, and this is HR, Toya, I know I'm due to call you, but I'm really ill. So I'm going to call you on Monday. I says, no problem. Monday come, didn't hear from her. Then she sends me an email, Toya, can I call you? And I was like, yeah, fine. So that was Wednesday. She called me on Wednesday. She says, Toya, I've got the feedback. Now, when she said that she wants to call me, obviously I know it's not going to be good. Otherwise she would have emailed me about what other stage would then follow or whatever, you know. So she says to me, I looked at the operations manager looked at the assignment and stuff, and basically the feedback is that there's not enough comments on the contract, and that question 2 and 3 weren't answered extensively, and that was the feedback. So I said to her, I said, Georgina, that is not feedback, because if you're saying that there's not enough comments on the contract, what actually are you looking for? And she says, she said that things were missed in the contract. I said, okay, cool. What were those things? I would like to know, because this is my bread and butter. This is what I do for a living. This is like an extension of me. And I know how I mark up my contracts. I know where I've worked. I know what complicated contracts looks like. This is not a complicated contract. So if you're making that type of comment, you know, I need the feedback, more importantly, from an educational perspective. And given that in total, I've spent 2.5 to 3 hours on this entire thing end to end, the least one would want is some, you know, almost professional courtesy in the feedback. She said, you know what, you're right. Don't worry, I'm gonna put some time in the diary for both of us once I've spoken to the operations manager. I didn't hear anything, because now they're moved on, innit? And then I saw on some of the job boards, you know, that I have access to, that they're still recruiting for this role. And I got really annoyed, because when I looked back on the contract's perfectly marked up. Nothing is missed. In fact, I went as far as even adding clauses that they missed out in that contract that are basic and fundamental to the business that they do. I basically have done the contract for them so they could go and send that to their client, because that's a live contract. Question 2 or 3 are neither here nor there. Those are not technical questions. That is more about, in my head, more about a test just to have a test. It's not even a personality thing at this point. You can't go into an organisation and tell them all the great grand things you're going to change, because number one, you're also going to have to live up to that. But number 2, it's important just to take a step back. Whenever I go into organisation, I do my due diligence. For the first 30 days at least, I don't even really talk that much. I'm more observing. Maybe I might ask a couple of questions here or there to let them know I'm still engaged and present. But I don't have that takeover spirit, because I'm very comfortable in my skin, who I am and what I do. So I sent an email last week, and I basically said in the email, and I'll say it to you. Hi, Georgina. I haven't heard from you following the redacted feedback that I received. I just wanted to reiterate that, as stated in the instructions that accompanied the test, there had to be a certain apportioned time or suggested apportioned time for the exercise. And 2.5 hours or 2 hours of that apportioned time was to mark up the contract. I do believe that the contract is a live contract, and therefore I definitely do understand that this is a contract you will then use to negotiate with the client. However, I spent a lot of time and a lot of effort marking up that contract, and even though I didn't agree with the questions that were asked in that questions 2 or 3, I still answered them, not only as honest as possible, but as professional, being a seasoned professional in this industry. I said the very least on a professional courtesy level that someone can do is at least give feedback that is constructive and feedback that actually makes sense and that pertains to the actual task at hand. I've taken the opportunity to look on Glassdoor just to see some of the feedback that has been left, as I've been prompted to leave some feedback on the organisation and the interview process. Now, rather than take this opportunity to actually leave this feedback, I also want to give your organisation an opportunity to re-engage in this process and give the adequate feedback that will enable me to learn and grow, but more importantly, enable me to actually understand what your recruitment process looks like. I look forward to hearing from you, and I would hope to leave feedback on the organisation by so and so date. Guys, my phone rang 4 times after I sent that email within 10 minutes. I didn't answer because I knew it was her. However, I did receive an email which I actually opened today because I wanted my reaction to be quite raw. So in the email, she basically wrote that both her and the operations manager thought that my initial interviews were absolutely fantastic. It's very clear I know what I'm doing. My personality came across very well. My technical understanding, knowledge and ability came through and came across. She said the test was done at an exceptional level. She said the contract was actually marked up at an exceptional level, but more what was really quite important and which was very clear was that they were actually missing certain things in their basic contract that I was able to actually input, and the legal counsel they used hadn't actually put those into their contract. He just marks it up as standard. Do you understand? Not necessarily adding to their templates, but maybe just responding to things that are flagged by by a potential customer or client. And she said that they did feel that with question 2 or 3 that they hadn't looked at it from my perspective. However, having reviewed it, they can immediately understand where I'm coming from, and therefore they would like to take me to the final stage interview. Now, I have actually gone back and I've basically said, unfortunately, on this occasion, I would like to decline participate in the recruitment process, and therefore I do not want to be taken to the final stage. I said in the response, it's really, really important, irrespective of whether it's in a pandemic, just but from a professional courtesy perspective, that if you are going to require candidates to engage in and actually do a test, that you're prepared to give some form of feedback, especially when you're requiring someone to spend over an hour doing a particular test. I says, I do know that this is a live contract that you will also then use to negotiate with a potential client. But we're in an industry that's very small, and therefore people talk, irrespective of whether it's a limited contract, a limited interim contract, fixed term contract or perm role. The industry itself is small, and therefore everybody talks. And your recruitment process is not only protracted, but it's actually quite insulting that you think that it's okay to give mediocre feedback and effectively think that that person should be satisfied with it. You are clearly looking for somebody who's not just a seasoned professional, but somebody who knows what they're doing. Therefore, there is a professional courtesy that should be attached to a recruitment process, and of course a test whereby if that person invests the time, you also invest the time in giving them constructive feedback that they can then go on and use. Unfortunately, this is not what was done here. I've had to challenge the mediocre feedback, and then after a reflection and a reasonable conclusion has now been formed, but in that time, I formed an opinion about this organisation, and I don't want to work for an organisation whose integrity is being compromised simply because they couldn't be bothered to themselves engage in the process properly. I wish you all the luck in the world. I hope that you find the suitable candidate to fill this particular role, and I hope you take the learnings from my experience and then put them into the process so that another candidate doesn't necessarily have to experience the same as I have. I'm going to say something to you guys. You better believe, you better understand that interviews are a two-way process. It's a two-way process. The organisation has a role and a requirement. You are looking for a role that pays. Maybe this is a career role for you, but you also have a requirement. Therefore, it's a mutual give and take. Just because you're being interviewed doesn't mean that you have to enact that self-servient mentality and just be grateful to get a response. You need to do your due diligence. Your due diligence starts not by telling them when the organisation formed in 1953. No one gives a shit. It's about doing your due diligence to find out about this organization. It's utilizing platforms like Glassdoor, where you see present and past employees leave feedback. Now, I will always be the first to say that, with feedback, you have to, be careful, because you have people who are quite aggrieved and they leave their comments and they exaggerate, whatever. But there are common themes in feedback, common themes. And as part of that due diligence, if there's a common theme of, for example, the organization isn't collaborative, I use that in my interview question. Toya, have you got any questions you'd like to ask us? Yeah, of course. As you would imagine, I've done my research on the organisation, and I could see that there is feedback left from on Glassdoor where it talks about the challenges within your organisation about being collaborative. How would you address, that type of concern? How is this team collaborative in the organisation? And how, as a manager, do you ensure collaboration across your team? Do you know what we call that? I call that transferable knowledge. Yeah, I'm transferring it to you. You need to give me the answer so that I have that knowledge. Your due diligence isn't the history. Your due diligence isn't by telling them you've always wanted to work for them since the beginning of time, since you were conceived. No. Due diligence is having a holistic view about an organisation as much as you can. Going out there, finding out the information, talking to your network if you can, or just being able to utilize platforms where people leave reviews and looking at the common themes or denominators that keep coming up or reoccurring, and then having those concerns, if they're a concern for you, being addressed in an interview format, holding organizations to account, and for them to also understand that we talk as individuals in our different sectors of our career, different organizations or just different industries. We talk, and sometimes it's not the verbal talk, it's the feedback anonymously left in these forums, so that these organizations understand that it's a two-way process. But for the purposes of this podcast and the purpose of the Toy Talks platform, you need to understand it's a two-way process. I've invested a lot of time on the Toy Talks masterclasses, and I have an interview skills masterclass, and I address things like this. Because a pandemic is not going to be the excuse why organizations treat us like shit. It's not going to be that. Remember, I had a lot of interviews. I was in different processes for a lot of interviews. I don't just close the door on them because this is a job I think I can do and I can do well. No, because I don't even know what you're like interviewing. In an interview, you could be the most wildest, maddest manager, and I could think this job is amazing, but I can't work under you, These are the things you need to be able to pull out very quickly in an interview. So feedback is imperative. Now, that's not to say that some organizations will tell you, we interview so many people, we can't always give feedback. As soon as you engage in a test, they have to give you feedback. Because when you engage in a test, you're doing some type of a test, they will have to review it to be able to tell you whether you've passed or not. So they have to give you the reason why you're not passed, because they know that reason. Because they've engaged you and they've engaged themselves in that process by reviewing what you have now submitted. So it's not enough, and I don't accept it. And it's not that the feedback is now an opportunity for me to provide a rebuttal. It's not a back and forth. Feedback, you have to change how you see feedback. Feedback should be about growth, knowledge, and learning that you can now take away for a new opportunity. It's not for you to challenge their view. They're entitled to their view, but you should want to know what their view is, and you know yourself, right? So you should be able then to read between the lines, take the learnings, or even if like there's a new comment that's made that you haven't heard before, be able to process that. Then when you go into a next interview, you should now be building upon that interview, patting yourself on the back for getting to a certain level in that interview, maybe second, third stage. Okay, fine, it hasn't worked out, but you know what? There's something special about me that's gotten me through those stages. And that feedback I may not agree with, but there's a couple of things that they've said that actually, do you know what? I'm going to utilize that information for my next opportunity. In order for you to really be good at interviewing, that needs to be your mindset. If you're going to engage in a process, you have to get feedback when you're doing a test. Now, if you've gone to a first, second stage interview, they're just verbal interviews and they don't give feedback, fine. I don't think that's helpful, because they should give you feedback, right? It's the same concept. But when you do a test and you're investing an increased and elevated amount of time, I want that feedback. And I will go on Glassdoor and the other platforms, and I am going to leave feedback, and I'm going to be very candid. It's cheeky. You're a cheeky little bastard for even giving me a contract to mark up that is a live contract that you're now going to use as your own with the client. Yeah, it's cheeky. And I'm going to write it there. So potentially, you know, there's an audience that's going to read this, and this organisation are going to make out like it's their own. Fine, but you should know that. But to think that it's just accepted that you can now dash me on the wayside, give me mediocre advice. And if it wasn't for the strength of character that I have, knowing who I am, I would internalise that. And do you know what? I'm going to be honest. When she gave me that initial feedback, I internalised it. I thought, have I gotten a bit rusty? Because I've taken a bit of a sabbatical and I've concentrated on my business, and I've still done contracts within my business, but am I a bit rusty on a commercial level? And that's when I was like, no, that's not what you're going to do. You're not going to sprinkle seeds of doubt in my mind and not justify it. Hell to the no, it's not going to happen. You have to have the strength and fortitude to go through an interview process. I genuinely believe that. I have found it more taxing on my time going through interviews as a contractor during a pandemic than I did before the pandemic, 100%. Because these organisations feel like they've got the power now and they're wielding it and using it anyhow, moving mad. But they still forget a fundamental thing, is that they have a requirement. So if you want to carry on like an idiot, you still have a requirement. And every time you spend with recruiters, speaking to candidates, that time you're spending hiring managers and organisations. That time is money. That time is money. On a personal level, what I've learned about myself is that if I'm going to do a test, irrespective of if I don't agree with 2 of the questions, I do need to commit to it a bit. There needs to be a bit of commitment. But that's a personal thing. They don't know that. I think that, obviously. But feedback is an intrinsic part of your growth as a professional in any capacity, at any level, in any career or professionalism. You need feedback, because that's how you're going to grow. Growth does not just come from higher education or additional education as part of your job, or experience because of length of service and time served in organisations. It comes from engaging in the process, in processes, and getting feedback from people who don't even know you and are basing it literally on how you present yourself to them. So again, I will say to you, when you're having interviews that don't require a test, organisations will sometimes not give you feedback because of the amount of people they have. Still ask. But when you engage in the process of a test, you should push for feedback. Use the template email that I quoted earlier on, because organisations still want to maintain their reputation. They still want to be attractive to potential candidates. Therefore, it's in their interest to answer, especially when you tell them where you're going to leave your feedback. You think these organisations don't go and do Google searches, or human resources don't go and do Google searches and see what people leave? Often organisations even respond to the comments that I left. So we already know they engage in that process. So you're going to engage then in the feedback process that happens before I leave my... Yes, you will. And I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do if you don't. Yeah. It's not a threat. It's a professional understanding of common courtesy and respect. I respect my career. I respect what I do for a living. I invest time and effort to get to where I am. And therefore, if I'm going to spend that time on your test, you are damn right going to give me constructive feedback. And I've taken the constructive feedback and I can employ it somewhere else. So where they're now telling me, actually, you're fantastic, you're this, you're that, we're taking you to the 3rd stage, I've now had to look for that constructive feedback, and I found it. And that constructive feedback I've given myself, where they failed to give it to me, is that, Toya, you need to commit to the entire process, not just the contracts that you'll be doing. But those question 2 and 3 are not pertinent or important, but actually maybe it was important to that organisation. So you could have added maybe an extra half an hour to your time to really, try it. But I still maintain my position. When you go into an organisation, you can't go there with takeover spirit. You need to take the time to understand what works, what doesn't work. You need to speak to your stakeholders. You need to work within that process to know where that process doesn't work. And also you need, on a personality level, understand where some of your obstructors are going to be. Some stakeholders will obstruct you from even implementing anything. You need to be able to assess who and what those stakeholders are, what power and leverage they have, and who are the decision makers. So therefore, you are going to have to take 30 days. And when you're new in an organization, you get away with that. Also, as well, I think something that's important is the way you frame things. You know, in the last episode of the podcast, I have an episode called Framing is Not Just for Pictures. The way you position things in an email, the way you communicate with people is so important. Nothing in my initial email, you know, kind of challenging the actual feedback was disrespectful or rude. It was highly professional. I needed to show her the type of professionalism that she had failed to show me. It's like I had to teach her, this is how you are professional with somebody and how you treat people, because that's not how I felt I was treated. And I know that when she read my email, she was compelled to have a conversation with me. Of course she was. That's why you called me 3-4 times. And now you've got an email trail. So now you can see I'm engaging you in an email. Respectful, you know, you have to respond. And now my response back to her, I think again, is still very respectful, but equally it's important to know your worth. And when you know your worth, you won't sell yourself short. I'm not doing it. And I stopped selling myself short in my mid to late 20s. That's when I stopped selling myself short, because I started to know what value I actually bring as a person, as Toya, but also as a professional. And that I understood that my development was ongoing. And, you know, even times where my roles got hard or I didn't understand, or I was at very early stages of learning certain things, I still held a value, that a willingness to want to learn, grow and be better and do better was still there. Therefore, in knowing my value, I'm not going to cheapen myself now to go to the third stage, already knowing that I have the taste in my mouth is soured because of the way they're doing the interview process, number one. Number two, am I going to have to fight for constructive criticism here on in? Like now I've challenged it, you've given it to me. Now you've thought about it now because you feel stupid. You want to take me to the next stage. At that next stage, whether I get the job or not, will you give me the constructive criticism, or do I have to now come and send you? I'm not doing it. I can't be bothered. Listen, interviews are taxing already without me having to beg you for some type of criticism or feedback, as we call it, because it's not criticism, it's constructive criticism. It's feedback. Clearly, you're not interested. So why should I engage in your very elementary, very childish process? Very unprofessional process. I'm not doing it, because I know there's going to be an organization somewhere that not only will know my value, whether I get the role or not, will respect the fact that I've invested the time to go through their process, and therefore will invest the time, which is not even a third of the time I've invested, just to give me that feedback. I do think it's important that I point something out. I also ask for feedback when I've had really good interviews and been offered the job, because I also want to know what works. I want to know, how did you feel I came across? Like, when I am coming across in a certain way, I have an intention how I want to come across, is that being received? If so, how have they processed it? There was one organisation I had an interview for. The feedback that I received, it was through an agency. That guy from the agency literally copy and pasted it into an email and sent it to me. The feedback he had received from that hiring manager. It was extensive. In fact, I've never actually received the feedback to that extent before. Usually it's a couple of words, but it was so detailed. And I thought, right, this is what works. This is what works. This is how he received what I said on these points. Right, these are the great things I can take for my next interview, because I didn't actually accept that role. There were certain things I wasn't particularly happy about, so I didn't end up accepting that role, but I'm sure we could discuss that in another episode. But these are the things that are great things that have worked. And actually, more importantly, how I know I come across is how I'm being received. Do you understand? So it's positive feedback and it's the constructive feedback. Whether you get the job or not, you should still ask. Even when you get the job, people get lost in the sauce. Oh, I've got the job. I've gone through this process. I've got the job. No, the first thing I say is, can I have some feedback? Is there anything you would improve on? What was it that tipped you in offering me the role? I really, really believe in constructive feedback in order to be better and grow. Even the organisation, even when they offer it to you, ask that. They will know that you are an ambitious person. They will know that you invest in yourself. That shows them that, Toya, you, Beverly, Andrea, whatever your name is, you're willing to learn and grow, and you want to know that information so you can put it into practice. It's not about ego. It's not about having a big head. What it's about is growth, because feedback is equivalent to growth if you use the feedback in the right way. So when I'm doing these masterclasses, the interview masterclass on toytalks.com website, you have to understand that particular masterclass is so detailed because I genuinely have a conscious understanding of not only who I am in my profession, but having had a career that has worked for some of the most highly recognized, esteemed and respected organizations, I've had that opportunity to ask the questions. And in the roles that I haven't been offered, I still ask those questions that positioned me in such a way that I was able to get these great roles. Do you understand? It's a nice cycle of growth. Career investment isn't, as I've mentioned before, just about the education piece, further development courses, learning on the job. That's not just it. You take the learning where you can get it. So do not be afraid to ask the question, irrespective of whether they have a caveat as an organisation that says they don't give feedback. But when you start doing tests, oh no, you need some constructive feedback. You need it. There is no legal obligation for them to give you that feedback. But in giving you that feedback, it shows that actually, you know what, this organisation actually takes the time to invest in people. Those are the things I get. So when you are now being offered the role, and offered many roles, because you've done your due diligence, because you've got the feedback, because you understand how the organisation now works, because you've asked those important, pertinent questions, you're now able to make not only an informed decision, but you're able to make a decision based on facts. And I feel like some people make decisions on roles they're offered just based on the money. If I make decisions just based on money, I won't be where I am today. In my 20s, I had to... in my 20s, I went from a role that had a difference. Like I was earning, for example, 70k. And then there was another role I applied for example, these are example figures, by the way. I wouldn't use the right figures. I wouldn't. And I accepted a role that was 50k. That's 20k difference. And it's not always about the money for me. The money is important, but I didn't place weight on money in my 20s. I didn't. Because I knew what I was doing. And now look at it here. I can actually work in my industry. I can work for absolutely any organisation. I'm not restricted to a particular sector because I've worked in public, private, third sector and charity sector. I've worked for the most, professional corporate organisations right down to public sector organisations and the roles in between. Deliberately. Again, when you're planning your career, and I recently did a Toy Talks for quite a large organisation in relation to Black History Month, and we were talking about career and promotion planning. A lot of that starts in the home, like before you've even entered these organisations, apply for the role. I've already talked about your vision boards and manifestation. I've spoken about it in previous episodes. These are all things and all information I've given you to start now taking control of your career. So now when you're in the process and you have invested time in their process, i.e. doing tests, you need to position it and frame it in such a way to get that feedback, especially when you know the feedback they've given you is mediocre. Because when they interviewed you, they knew they wasn't going to get mediocre from your CV. So why is it now that the feedback they give you is mediocre? No, I need constructive criticism because I need to learn and grow and take the learnings to my next organisation. And if you're not prepared to give me that, no problem. But I will also give feedback online about this process and my opinions. And because you're telling the truth and it's facts, they can't now challenge it because equally, you're being honest and you're standing in your truth. It is intrinsic and imperative for personal career growth as a person in your career and just in life to get constructive feedback because no one is perfect. You don't know everything. And there's always areas of improvement to do better. And those improvements and those things that you put into practice will be a launch pad for you for your next opportunity to be able to put the learnings from previous experiences so that you can be even better. And I'm going to sit here and comfortably tell you, I nail interviews 10 out of 10 each and every time. And in the obscure chances where I don't get called back after an initial interview, it's either that I've deliberately not engaged in that process or interview, or I just don't want the job. But if I'm engaged in the process, it has to be because I'm at least interested in the job. Do you understand? I'm not trying to waste my time. So if you're wanting to beef up your interview skills, if you're maybe taking some time out, or you've been made redundant, or you're currently unemployed and you're getting back into the world of work, and you need to now practice your interview skills, I suggest not only do you re-listen and take notes of this podcast episode, but you go onto the toyatalks.com website and you download the interview masterclass, and you take the time to learn, grow, understand, and then when you go to those interviews, you ace and smash them interviews out of the ballpark. And when you're offered the role, you ask for some feedback. Or if you're not offered the role, but you've done the test and gone through quite an extensive process, you ask for the feedback. And then you lick your wounds, take the learnings, and you go again and go through another process. That's how it's done. People often ask me if I get nervous for interviews, and the answer is yeah, I do get nervous. I get nervous because, number one, we're doing this new way of working where we're doing remote interviews and stuff like that, and people can't see my body language, but I can't read theirs. I find that when you're doing interviews remotely as well, you have to be even more attentive and even more committed to your due diligence, because you're now you're seeing the person, you're looking at facial expressions, and you're quite limited in what you actually see, right? Because it's whatever is shown in that camera as opposed to being with someone face to face. I'm going to talk about, I'm sure in an up and coming episode, about one of the interviews I had, and I really had to there were two roles, and the two managers for the two teams were on the interview, and I had to choose which role I wanted to be put forward for. And I had to literally use a 30-minute interview and really be attentive, ask really pertinent questions to make the right decision. I ended up making that right decision. And the only reason I didn't take the role is because I felt like there would be a push to come back to work, like physically into the office, earlier than I would be comfortable with. I asked them about what they have learned from COVID pandemic and from a business perspective, and I wasn't comfortable with what they felt that they learned from it. I definitely felt like there was a culture of this meeting culture that didn't make sense to me, and there was a few things that put me off. And whilst the process was again protracted, the roles were interesting, but that interview was really important because I got to test how I do my due diligence and whether it's effective enough. And it was. And also as well, I had improvements to make because the process was that protracted that I ended up doing a test. And the reason I had to do the test was my own fault. So I definitely think it's also important that you get a balance as well, because again, remember, I say you're always learning. Always, I'll take learning where I can find it, whether it's feedback, whether it's something that I don't do very well in an interview that I notice myself. And I always take a notepad and pen to a remote interview. Even a face-to-face interview, I'll take a notepad and pen. Things I notice about myself when I'm placed under a certain amount of pressure, like what contingency plans have I now had to put in place, because sometimes your camera doesn't work. Sometimes my laptop fan will be so loud. I had to buy an external fan for my laptop so I could place my laptop on the fan. Do you understand? I've had to develop that as part of my learnings when things have gone wrong that you would never have anticipated. So I definitely will share that with you, I'm sure, in a future episode. So now we're going to move on. I think we're ready to move on to some of the dilemmas. And at the end of the dilemmas, I'm going to talk to you about boundaries, because I think I need to dedicate an episode to boundaries. But I'm going to give you an example where I failed to put some boundaries in place, and what has then transpired because of those lack of boundaries. And then that will be a nice segue into a boundaries episode that I will be recording shortly. I have to be honest as well, sometimes I wait until I've started recording to actually read some of these dilemmas. So I'm going to take the first few, and then not in particular order, but let me put them in order. Okay, so hi there. Just a quick email to say thank you for your podcast. It's really good. Keep up the great job. From Anonymous. That's so lovely. Thank you so much. Do you know what? Thank you would takes you a long way in a job. In life, I definitely think thank you is so powerful, because some people, they don't even know the last time they've heard it. Thank you could be the difference between someone that goes over and above to help you out, And I really appreciate that email, because this person took the time to think about me, think about how they've utilized, benefit, or enjoyed the podcast, and thought, do you know what? I'm actually going to email her and say thank you. So that's really nice, and thank you so much. And I do get a lot of thank yous on my social media as well. I must say that I definitely do. But it's always nice, when somebody kind of reaches out to you and says, actually, it's not anything I want, Toya. I just want to say thank you. I want to acknowledge it. So thank you. That's so nice. I do put a lot of effort into the podcast. I really, think about the topics. I really listen to you guys and kind of what you want to hear, what you're going through, but more importantly, what I think that you guys can learn from my own experiences. Like every episode, there's always a treatment that happens before the episode is recorded. And that treatment is more about, what topics am I going to cover? And I ask myself, why am I doing this episode? What am I trying to achieve from this episode? There is a thought process. I don't just wake up one morning and switch it on. There's some people that I know, they'll go out and they'll rent a studio with their own money. They want to create this aesthetic about their podcast, when in fact people just want the information. People either just want a feel-good episode, or they want to learn. People know what they're getting from you. And I feel like some people need to just believe in themselves and their source. Like, we're in a pandemic and not everybody can afford the aesthetics. You have to deal with what you have. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm just trying to share my truth to help Black women navigate the world of work. That is my objective. That is the premise. That is the goal. And for me, making sure I have quality equipment, making sure that I produce and deliver an episode that's not only edited well, but the content is beneficial. Those are the things that are important to me. When my podcast stops being beneficial to people, that's when I stop. Do you understand? I know this is not going to last forever, but while it does last, I'm going to commit to it and do it properly, and that doesn't necessarily require me to go into a studio and spend thousands of pounds. I'll do it in the comfort of my home. And I just, it's nice to be appreciated. So let's go on to the next. Okay, I'm going to read this out for you guys. Okay. Dear Toya, I hope you're well. I messaged you on Instagram regarding my own dilemma, and thank you for the advice. Also, I'm loving my hoodie. So obviously, I released the Toya Talks apparel in August. However, I have a dilemma from my sister, who has agreed to let me email it over to you. My sister was put on a final written warning along with a performance review letter. She has been at a skincare company for 2 years and was put on this final warning due to her not following procedure, which led to a client being injured during laser. Bear in mind, she had no prior warnings, but I digress. My sister has been asking about her performance management and has had iffy answers and no solid response. It is now week 5 and her anxiety is getting worse. Apparently, they've spoken to her about her performance, but she has not been involved in those discussions. My sister came to me for advice and I helped her plan out a letter that she will send to her manager and human resources. I recommended she email, as she has been asking her manager with no written evidence. So this is the letter that she has prepared. Dear manager, obviously she's put the person's name, but I'm just changing it. Further to my disciplinary hearing on the 16th of September, I was subject to a 6 weeks performance review, whereby the manager would go through any unsatisfactory performance and the manager, Andrea, would go through a weekly review with the outcome of my performance at the end of the 6 weeks. I have questioned the manager multiple times about my review, and she has replied that she doesn't know about it or what to do, and that she would speak to the area manager, and Andrea. I am now on my 5th week performance review and have not had any guidance or feedback on my performance. With the review ending next week, this is concerning and has a massive impact on my anxiety, leading to stress. I would like any communication had regarding my performance management in writing, so that I can see where I need to improve, and also to voice my concerns and opinions on how things are going. I hope this, and then she wrote, I hope this wasn't too long, as I'm aware of your time. Cut out the letter. That was just so you had an idea of what we'll be sending. Okay. So what I'm going to say is this letter is really good. It's very straight to the point. There's no faffing. There's no emotions. It's factual. Okay. And I really, really like this letter. This is the first time somebody has drafted a letter, sent it to me, asked me my opinion, and I really like it. I think that it's professional. I think like it goes straight to the point. But more importantly, you're dealing with the issues very early on in this email. What I will add to this is that where you said, I would like any communication had regarding my performance management in writing so that I can see where I can improve and also voice my concerns and opinions and for transparency purposes. That's what you should write there. I think also you should say, since you're on the final warning, where you on your third paragraph where you say it's impacting your anxiety and leading to stress, and therefore I've taken external advice in order to ensure that I understand what my position is, because it has been unclear up until this point. That's what you should write there and end it like that. Because what you're letting them know is, I understand that you're not following a process. You've taken me from a conversation or an incident straight to a final warning, and there's been no transparency in that process. You've had conversations where I haven't been a party to those conversations, and yet here I am, anxiety, stressed, and on a final warning. And I don't see how I've gotten to that point, especially since I've been asking for a performance review before the incident happened and you've not provided that. So that's what I would do. I would also tell you to tell your sister to start looking for other job opportunities, because a final warning, I mean, the fact that they haven't even followed any due process tells me that one day she might do something wrong, like forget to close the door or something. And that to them could then say, okay, we're letting you go. Because if you're not telling me the parameters in which this final warning has occurred, then anything I do could lead to my dismissal. So I understand completely why your sister's anxious. So you need to control this narrative, and you need to basically, as I've said, add those wordings in the couple of sentences that I mentioned earlier on. But equally, from a self-care and preservation perspective, you need to start looking for other roles just in case. And also it will help you if you are then dismissed for whatever reason. It's easier to digest when you know that you've been actively looking at other opportunities, because you know that this role is potentially hanging on a thread. I think also you should also put in a line there. So just before you say, I would like any communication, I think you should add a paragraph that says, please could you share with me the disciplinary action policy, so I'm able to understand how I have gone to a final warning. Even though I know that there has been discussions about my performance, it'll be interesting to see what the policy says about managed performance, even before things get to a point where we're having the discussions, so that I can understand what I can expect or what hasn't been done, and we can rectify it collaboratively. You need to say something like that, because remember I talk about framing and things like that, but you have to also let them know you haven't followed process. So let me see what that process looks like, because I know you don't have one. I think that when you're in customer facing roles where you're doing treatments and stuff, things are going to go wrong, but this is why they need to give you sufficient training and do the performance reviews to be able to support you as you do your role and as you deal with clients. So yeah, I would, as I've suggested, add those things that I've mentioned, but also this email that you have constructed is very good. I'm just adding those things because obviously I'm an outsider looking in, and I know kind of how they will receive this and how they'll process it, but you have to ask your sister to hold her nerve, and don't feel obligated to respond straight away. Like, clearly, like, you're an amazing sister, I can see that, let her have those discussions with you before she puts like pen to paper, as they say. And when she's in the organization, if she goes back into work and they say, oh, can we have a meeting with you, remember what I always say, you need to then follow that up with a summary of what that meeting was. Do you understand? Especially because she's stressed and she's anxious. It's important that she does, even if when she comes home she tells you and you both do it together, it needs to happen like, within a day or two of a face-to-face meeting that hasn't been scheduled, so that she covers her own back. But as an initial email, that's great. So yeah, well done. Let's move on to the second dilemma. So this second dilemma I received on, I believe it was Instagram, and I told the young lady, no, that's not what we're doing here. Just because I respond to people's messages, or I try to, when they Instagram send me a DM, doesn't mean that's how I'm accepting dilemmas. I've made it clear in the last episode. So she put it in writing and she sent it to me. I asked her to keep it clear, concise, straight to the point with no emotion. And I have received a very long email and an additional email and then another DM telling it was a lot. So we're going to talk about that anyway, because I think I blame myself for not putting certain boundaries in place sooner. But I need to tell you guys how to, or at least advise you guys how to put those boundaries in so you don't find yourself in certain positions where now you're having to backtrack because it's harder. But I digress. What's important here is this young lady needs some assistance and she's come to me, and therefore I'm going to try my best to help her. So she's entitled it Declined Voluntary Redundancy. Hi Toya, sending you this email to clear up what I said via DM. Dilemma. I recently applied for voluntary redundancy at my organisation and have been declined. I'm 26 years old and my salary is so and so amount per year. And I have been in the organisation for 4 years and 6 months. They explained that they're offering a group-wide enhanced package even if you have been an employee for less than 2 years, which is the normal national minimum. It's still open to everyone. On top of that, they're offering an extra 3 months extra pay and £4,000 towards training after you leave. My quote or figures, and they have come back with indicative figures for the amount of 14,000, taxed at the highest bracket from my calculations. I would be paid just over 17,500. So what she's gone and done is she's broken it down based on her salary, her age, 3 months, and then the standard redundancy, which is 4 weeks. She's also given me an example of her experience here, and I read, at this point in time, I haven't had any official training. This is something that I have been bringing up with them for about 1.5 years. They say that it's a learn-on-the-job role. However, I'm unable to be involved in any projects because the work that needs to be done is that of someone who is experienced and familiar with the software. That's an excuse, but I'm going to come back to that in a minute. I'm not a qualified analyst, as this job seemed like a great opportunity for me in the beginning. I have been signed off twice due to personal issues. However, when I have been back, I haven't been put on consistent training, so the bulk of my role is just admin. That's your responsibility. I don't play that game, but I'm coming back to that. You guys know I'll give it to you straight, no chaser. If you're going to send me an email, you have to know that you're going to get candid honesty, and you might not like it. It may be the uncomfortable truth, but it's the truth. I have been on one course in the last 2 years. As you know, I have also asked to be sponsored to gain relevant qualifications as an analyst and have been declined. My day-to-day job is I have been put in charge of the organisation of specific inboxes, doing extra extractions. I was told I would get training, and then okay, fine. My colleague's application was accepted. He is a P3 and I am a P1, so I think that's the level. He has been at the team for just over 1 year. I've been involved in many projects due to experience. Right, I'm not going to go on about this. I know that my role isn't vital to the needs of the team. They want to just preserve a spot for future employment. I don't have specific skillet to that is essential to the team. That is essential to the team, and others can definitely do the admin, and I'm tasked to do on a daily basis. Their reasons for declining my redundancy, which is obviously more important, is there's lots more people in my team have applied than expected. My role will be required in the future. If they make me redundant, then they have to make the role redundant and won't be able to rehire anyone in my place, which is fair enough. It's also worth noting that this organisation is based in Ireland and they have UK offices. Thank you in advance for your help with this. I know you're really busy, so I appreciate looking at this at all. Anonymous. So let's start with the training. So if you remember the earlier episodes of the Toy Talks podcast, in fact, I think it's the first or second, there is an episode that says your manager is not the key to your success and you can't put black women in the corner. I suggest you go and listen to those episodes, and if you have listened to them, you haven't listened to them properly. Please don't email me, anybody that is, and tell me that your organisation hasn't given you training. Don't tell me that. And I'll tell you the reason why you can't tell me that. Nowhere I have ever worked in my entire career has any organisation voluntarily given me training that they initially may be offered or used as a part of an offer when they first offered me a job. No. Any training that I have ever received in my career has been on the job first and foremost, and has been me saving up money from that job, no matter how long it's taken me to save that money, to then invest that in my own training. I don't look to organisations to give me training. In the same way, organisations have never trained me for the job. So that on-the-job training doesn't even come with handover sometimes. I remember working for a tech company. I didn't understand anything to do with their tech, you know. There was no handbook, there was no handover, there was just a bunch of bullshit and fires that I had to put out. And I had to literally walk into that role naked. And I had to roll up my sleeves, and I had to ask the right questions, and I had to get on going. I do think that organisations should train people. If you say you're going to give someone training and you've apportioned the training budget or whatever, you should give it to them. But I've not met organisations that, or a handful of organisations that do it, but I've not met or been in situations where that's been given to me. No one has ever given me training. Not at all. I've had to book training for certain things that I know that is on the day that I work, and say to my bosses, I need to take a training day, and they say no, and I've had to take it out my own annual leave. That's how committed I am to my own development. I didn't get where I am in my career by mistake. I got here by hard graft. No one gave me shit all but bullshit. So when you say that, oh, they gave you a colleague training, didn't give you training, that's very unfortunate. But that's a reality for a lot of us. It's been my reality, where somebody's been here, the organisation, for 6 months. I've been here for 2 years, but you've put them on 2 training courses already. I don't have time to fight that fight. Shall I tell you why? Because I'm in charge of my own career. I am, Toya, I am. When you see me, with certain things, you see me with the designer bags, you see me with the new glasses, it's because I work so hard to be able to attain these things. And part of that working so hard has been sowing seeds of training into myself that organisations have failed to give me. And now I'm able to be in a certain level of my career. I'm able to afford certain things. And recruiters and hiring managers will say, oh, your experience is fantastic, you've done this, this, and this. I'm not crediting anybody else with giving me those opportunities or giving me that training other than me. So why you still think, or why anybody still thinks an organisation is either going to give you training or going to give you what they promised you in terms of training is beyond me. We've already discussed extensively that a lot of these organisations are white constructs to benefit white people. You are not a white person, so you're not going to benefit from it. It's fucking unfair. It's fucking annoying. It's upsetting. But that's where you are. If you know that this is the situation, what are you going to put in place to benefit yourself? But instead, you've basically accepted your situation. You've been there for 2 years and you've been on one course. You've just accepted it. You've basically decided not to invest in your own career because you're still waiting for a breakthrough with this organisation. You're not going to get it, darling. So telling me that is superfluous. I can't do anything with that because that's your responsibility, as it is my responsibility for myself. So when you talk about this voluntary redundancy, that's how it works. They'll give you the rules for the redundant. So redundancy basically, and I know, listen, I already know that I've fallen short, and I apologise to the Toy Talks audience, to you, to everybody, because I need to record and upload the redundancy masterclass on the Toy Talks website. I haven't done that. I'm committing to doing that. So by the almighty grace of God, by the end of October, I need to have at least recorded it. Even if I edit it, let me record it. Because I feel like I need to give you guys the gritty truth about redundancy, right down to the financial breakdown, because you guys are not approaching these redundancies properly, you know. And the information's out there, but you're just not doing it. I don't understand. Redundancy effectively is basically you no longer have a job there. The job is no longer there. It's a redundancy. They're making you redundant and the job is not there. Legally, organisations can't now make your job redundant only to re-advertise for that role. So I definitely understand when they say that the role will be required in the future, and if they make you redundant, then they won't be able to rehire anyone for the role. That's a standard. But unfortunately, if you're looking to appeal the redundancy, of course you're well within your rights to appeal it. But they're going to tell you no, because there's no legal obligation for them to accept your voluntary redundancy. After all, the most prominent word in that sentence is voluntary. Voluntary redundancy. And just because you volunteer doesn't mean they have to accept it. You have no leg to stand on here. Now, this young lady then sent me a follow-up email So I'm going to give you like a high level overview of that follow-up email, and let's see if that changes the initial advice and opinion that I've just given. So the next day she sends me another email and she says, "Hi again, Toya. I was a little concerned because my manager was asking me questions about the VP, so vice president, and I felt it would be better to not discuss it with him till I know more on Tuesday. I did, however, get a follow-up call with my big boss yesterday. I asked if there was an appeals process, so he came back to me confirming that there is none. He also asked me what I was thinking about the decision. Well, before I continue, he knows what you think about the decision. That's why you asked him about an appeal and he said no. So he knows what you think about the decision, i.e. you want to appeal. I explained that it was an important opportunity for me. I'm grateful for the role. However, having not had substantial training for the last 2 years, I feel I haven't been allowed the opportunity to grow, which was promised to me at interview stage. Promises, no contractual obligations in a promise. Well, not a promise anyway in this format. This has in turn impacted my mental health, along with the difficulty of my physical health issues due to the bank not providing the relevant equipment since March. I'm also signed off sick to my back. Just thought I'd get you all the information. Apologize again for my panic in the first direct message. I realized it didn't come across well at all and I hate to be that person." So you've got a few things here. So let's address the boss. There is no appeals process. Some organizations do appeals process, but there's none. That's the end, babe. They're not giving you voluntary redundancy. You can't make them. There's no legal obligation for them to. It's at their sole discretion. There's nothing you can do here. You have to continue working there or find another job. So when you spoke about here in this follow-up email, you told them you haven't had substantial training for 2 years. Again, why is that their responsibility? It's their responsibility because they made you a promise. How many broken promises have you received in your lifetime? I can say if I had £1 for every broken promise I've received, I promise you, I would have relocated to Barbados and retired by the age of 25. I'm sorry. If somebody tells me that they're going to give me training, you need to negotiate that into your contract with a caveat of the time. So if someone says, "Oh, we're going to give you training, okay, cool, as part of your role, and that's as part of the offer letter, yeah, I would negotiate that into my contract and make it explicit that this training will be given within 6 months of my employment, having passed the probation period, so that you make it a legal obligation for them to do it. And if they don't, it's a breach of contract. A promise is not enough. But again, even if you negotiated it into your contract, your career, you need to commit. If this is your career, you need to commit to it. I know people who are analysts. I have one of my very good friends. She's an analyst, a specific industry. I believe it's in tech. I believe it's in tech. She's a contractor. She's committed to her career. If she needs to do training, even before she was a contractor, she invested the money. And I remember there was one particular friend I had. It took her 3 years to save for the course that she wanted to do. But she knew that once she'd done this course, she'll be flying above. That's what she did. So when you come to say this, and this is what you said to the manager doesn't care, darling. The manager doesn't care. When you're telling him it's impacted your mental health, I don't know why you told him that. Because clearly if they care, they wouldn't tell you there's no appeal process. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't know what you want me to advise you on. And if the advice is, "Toya, where do I go from here?" Well, where you go from here is back to work, because there's no grounds here. There's nothing here. They have followed due process, They really have, because they can create the process that benefits them, because this is voluntary redundancy. They don't have to do it. It's not like a compulsive redundancy. Now that's compulsory redundancy. Now that's different. But again, when I do the masterclass that I will then upload onto the toytalks.com website, I will speak about voluntary redundancy in a lot more detail. But again, I'm going to say something, and this is something I'm going to talk about in the masterclass when I eventually do it and upload it. Whenever I have had a job, well, first of all, I've never been through a redundancy process, but I've worked in organisations where my colleagues, my friends who I've become quite close to, have been through the process. And within that organisation, I've had to advise them on how to handle the redundancy process. Yeah? Whenever I when I was planning my career, right? So when I knew what I wanted to achieve, when I figured out what I wanted to do, etc., 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 was on the trajectory. If you've been following me on Snapchat, you will attest to this. So I was a contract manager for years, right? Let's call it 5-6 years. Let's call it that. And I realised I can't have a one-dimensional career, you know? Because if I'm made redundant tomorrow, the question that I should ask myself is, what transferable skills have I acquired where I can assimilate into another role? Because they will ask you as part of a redundancy process is, these are the roles we have, which ones do you want to apply? And you won't necessarily have to go through a full interview process. As long as you have the transferable skills and prove that you could do the job and be able to write that down and, you know, prove that to them, they can then move you from the role you've been made redundant in and put you into another role. That's if you choose that path. And my thing has always been, how am I making myself more attractive to organizations, my current one or any others, if I was in a redundancy situation? So what I did was, I decided to do a level 4 diploma in SIPS. Those of you who have been following me on Snapchat, Toya Washington, all one word on Snapchat, saw me go to that course. I will finish work I start work at 9. I've already left my house at 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'll finish work at 6. From there, I will walk down to the center where I do my course. I will be there until 10 p.m. doing a course. From there, I will now go home. I'll maybe get home midnight. Eat, bed, work. I will also have homework, coursework, exam practice until the exam date. When I was going through this course, I said to some of my friends, I said, if you want to support me, give me space to do this course. Any friend that wasn't there at the end, I knew that wasn't for me because I had to make some sacrifices. I paid for that course. That course cost me over £3,000. And that's not even including paying for the exam separately. That doesn't even include some of the course books that weren't involved in that, included in that price. It's a sacrifice I had to make. And I don't even like procurement, but the transition from contract manager to procurement is very easy. And I just had to find a niche within that procurement that I like and focus on it and develop it. In case, you never know. When contracting started drying up a little bit, when I say drying up, it started getting a bit quiet. And I'm talking now as a contractor, I had to now find a job. Do you know what I did? I started applying for procurement manager, senior procurement manager roles, and I was getting those interviews. I was offered a couple of jobs. Because I had to be able to pivot in case something happened. As a perm, fixed term, whatever, it doesn't matter. I had to be able to pivot. When I was in an organization and we were made aware, and I was perm, that we're going to go through a restructure, I wasn't worried. Everybody was panicking. In fact, the sweat that was dripping from one girl's sideburn, I said, Jesus is Lord. She's stressed here. I wasn't stressed because I knew that I was completing this procurement thing. So I could pivot. And in that organization, I would do certain procurement things. I will force myself into certain projects. I would ask certain questions. Yes. And then when it came to restructure, I was safe. They were like, actually, we do need you, Toya. But if you didn't need me, no problem. I know how to fight for my job. I know how to fight for another job. I know how to pivot. And when you're taking these roles and they're career roles, you need to, as part of your career planning, which maybe I need to do an episode on career planning. I've already done a presentation on it. You need to start thinking the bigger picture. The bigger picture isn't about what is happening right now. The bigger picture is if there was a global pandemic, that is now what our bigger picture looks like. If there's now a global pandemic and there's a restructure, where could I pivot to? Unfortunately, I don't get the impression that that's what you thought about because you believe that the training is their promise that they haven't fulfilled. So I doubt very much that you thought about the pivoting aspect of it. And I understand that money would come in handy if they accepted your voluntary redundancy because maybe that money would allow you to pivot because then you could invest in yourself in further training. I understand that. But darling, you haven't managed this situation very well. I'm so sorry. And the reason, and I say you haven't managed it very well, is because you haven't owned your career. You haven't owned this job. You've just been sitting there waiting for somebody to remember that they promised to train you. That is why you're here now. That's why you're here. You think you're gonna appeal to their better nature to allow you to? No, they're not. Because you need to understand that money that you're asking for, that money they're offering, is coming out of their budget to make you redundant. And unfortunately, darling, there's no way you can go with it. You have to accept the L. And the L is lesson learned. That's what I call an L. Lesson learned. And now you need to start putting the advice I've given you in this episode into practice. Now you need to start career planning. You need to start looking for other opportunities. You need to start investing in yourself. You need to start saving to invest in yourself. I understand what you were saying, that, you know, you have some illnesses and things like that. Babes, I'm sorry to hear that. You said you have some physical health issues. I'm sorry to hear. I understand. Like, don't get it twisted because I'm being straight and direct that I don't get it. I get it. I understand mental health. My mental health has been challenged several times. But these people do not care. There's no sentimental in workplace and professionalism. You can kiki, ha-ha, Christmas party, birthdays. You can go down to the pub for a drink. But when push comes to shove, these people are running a business and you are an employee with an employee number. So I apologize that this may not be the advice that you hope that you would receive, but I really hope that you take the advice, own the advice, reflect on the advice, and now start planning how you're going to now develop your career. What's the next steps? Even if the development of your career is not in this specific industry, you've got other interests. How are you going to invest in yourself? How are you going to start taking responsibility for your career? It's the same like bills. When the bills come, you don't go to EE or 3 and say, hey, EE3, I'm sorry, I can't pay this bill today. You guys promised me you'll give me discount. You didn't give me discount. I can't do it. And in fact, I'm tired. You can't. You got to pay them bills. The bills are free and EE don't care. You have to deal with your career with the same ruthlessness that organizations deal with you. And that ruthlessness is, I know what I want and I'm going to invest in myself and I'm going to go and get it. So then I'm able to pivot if I need to pivot. But more importantly, I'm able to create a role for myself and niche for myself. I understand that actually I have to hit the ground running, and the training that I actually get that's on the job is what I've managed to force myself into to receive. It doesn't matter if this role is based in Ireland. It doesn't matter if this role is based in Scotland, Kenya, Nigeria, or Ghana. The theory of it is the same. It's the same. Okay, let me ask you a question then. In your employment contract, what does it say about redundancies or voluntary redundancies? I put it to you that your employment contract is silent on the voluntary redundancy, but speaks about redundancy as a whole. And you know why that is? Because organizations have no obligations in a voluntary redundancy. In a normal redundancy, yes, they do. And the law caters for that to protect employees. And unfortunately, darling, where you are is not, you're not in I get it, you're not happy. You're not in the greatest position. But this is a position that actually you also had a hand in. So I hope this helps you. I hope this gives you some comfort. And I hope you receive my advice in the spirit in which I'm giving it to you. Anyway, guys, I think that is going to be it for dilemmas. And I know that I have quite a few. And I just want to let you guys know that during the course of these Tuesday episodes, I will be addressing them. I ask you to be patient with me. I ask you to also, when you're sending your dilemmas and you're emailing them, hello@toytalks.com, you are clear, concise, straight to the point. Don't be sending me multiple emails with attachments. This is not a consultation. You're not paying for this. You're being apportioned 10 minutes each. And I have to use the best of my ability to help you. And you've got to respect my time. You have to also respect that there's other people that also want my time in advising them. So I remember when I started this dilemma segment, I did mention to you guys about boundaries. When it comes to the workplace, it's so important to set boundaries because that is how you're going to get your respect. This topic is deserving of a dedicated episode. You're going to get it. But let me give you an example of where I haven't set boundaries and where I've paid the price for not setting them boundaries. When I started the podcast and the dilemmas and stuff, I told people, email in with your dilemmas, I'm going to help you. I didn't set the parameters. In the last episode, Framing is Not Just for Pictures, I spoke about my frustration with some of those dilemmas, and then I put in the boundaries. But this podcast is almost 1 year old. I should have done it from the beginning, because what has happened is where I haven't set the boundaries and perimeters of these dilemmas. There was one girl, she sent me an email, yeah? That email was 3 pages long of an email. If you imagine on a Word document, 3. She sent me 6 attachments. Then she sent me a follow-up email with 2 attachments, plus an email in the body of that email. And I was frustrated, I was irritated, but I couldn't even get that upset with her. Because I never set the boundaries. Therefore, she is taking that opportunity to get everything in. Not factoring the fact that I'm not only a businesswoman running a business and running businesses, that I have a personal life. And the worst part of it is, in one of her emails she writes, I know you're really busy. I know you have a lot on with your apparel line. I know you have this. So you're acknowledging the things that I am doing, but you don't see them as important enough. What is important is your dilemma. In any form it takes. 10, 9, 15, 20 pages. But I can't get onto her. I couldn't. Because if I set the parameters and she then sent me them emails, I would be justified in deleting it. Or going back to her and say, this is not on. But I didn't. So what I've done now, almost 12 months in, is set the parameters. And people now are having to reprogram themselves to understand where my limits and boundaries are. But in the meantime of reconditioning, people are still sending me emails that are like 4 or 5 pages attachments, sending me links to certain places. And now I'm going through the painful process now of actually having to actually answer those dilemmas and reinforcing what those boundaries are and letting them know that next time this is what's going to happen. But because I didn't put them in place, I'm still having to honor what I've actually advertised. It's the same at work. When you go into organizations, you don't do your due diligence, as we speak about in several episodes. You just go in there, setting no boundaries. You're disrespected left, right, and center. In fact, they'll even tell you that you look like a monster. They'll even tell you, oh my God, you're stinking and smelling. Only joking, banter, 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 we are joking. When they're in the workplace saying, oh my God, you look like a man today. Banter, you're laughing with them. But when you're going home, you're angry. Your chest is beating out of your heart is beating out of your chest. Your eyeballs are red. You're just consuming it, just taking it, hoping that they're going to understand that that's rude. Then one day you flip. Do you think they're going to remember all they've been putting you through a blood clot? They're not going to remember all of that. They're just going to remember your reaction. And who's responsible for that? You. Because you never set the boundaries or perimeters in which people are interacting and dealing with you. You're kiki and ha-haing to be accepted. You're kiki and ha-haing because you think, actually, I don't want to rock the apple cart. But the apple cart has been rocked and has no wheels anymore. It's broken. You're offended. Every time you interact with them, you're even angry. You are responsible for setting the boundaries in which people should deal and operate with you on. You are responsible, nobody else. So if people are constantly breaking boundaries, you have to ask yourself, have I even set them? Have I reinforced them? Have I made them clear enough? Have I set them at all? If you set boundaries, people will challenge those boundaries to check the authenticity of this boundary. Is this really a boundary? And that is your opportunity to reaffirm those boundaries. But they have to be present to begin with. Now, if you're the type of person who hasn't set those boundaries and now realize you have to, and now you're backtracking, you still then have to service those people who didn't know the boundaries existed because you never set them. Do you understand? It's a lot of work. It's better that you do it in the beginning. So with any new contract, even when I was a perm, do you know how I set those boundaries? By doing my due diligence. I already know who the troublemaker is, who the arse licker is, who's the titty tatatella, always talking, chatting shit, the person that is the troublemaker of the group, the Karens, the Antheas of the team. And then I set my boundary accordingly. They will tell jokes. Sometimes they're funny, but I won't laugh. Because they don't know where to place me. That's part of my boundary setting. They will tell a joke, try to do one out of my expense. I'll be like, I'll pause and I'll do this smile. I call it my sinister smile. because it's only with one side of my face, I'd be like, yeah, that's not really funny. Yeah. A white person told me how to do that. When they start asking personal questions, oh, so are you married or? That's a bit personal. Sorry, it takes me a while to warm up to people. No, it doesn't necessarily take me a while. Well, it does, because I'm a Libra and it takes me a while. But actually, I don't want to share that with you. There's organisations I've worked with. If you speak to them, one organisation will tell you Toya is on the ball with the work. She's amazing, but she's really, really quiet. Another organisation will say, oh, Toya's so outgoing, but when it comes to the work, she's serious. Another organisation will say, Toya is a nice person to work with, but she's a force to be reckoned with. When it comes to the work, she gets it done, she delivers, and she goes home. Depending on the due diligence and the outcome of the due diligence of these organisations will depend on what side of my personality they will get. But they will always get a redacted version. No one has the right to get the full version apart from my family and friends. At work, they don't get the full version, they get the redacted version. Because with that comes respect, professionalism, but more importantly, if I set those boundaries, there's a limit to how you're going to involve me in your politics. There's a limit to how far you will go with me. And more importantly, there's a level of professionalism that I exude when I set those boundaries, that you will understand I'm not the one. Our level is different. Your yay is definitely different from my yay. Oh, so what do you like doing in your spare time? Oh, I like watching films. I like going for runs. Sometimes those questions are loaded. It's to see who you are, if you have a partner. They're loaded. I'm not stupid. I know where them questions come from. But I'll answer you. But I'll answer you in such a way that I've answered your question, but you haven't really gotten what you wanted out of it. But you've gotten the information. I know how to play the politics. I know how to play the game. I've studied Oyibo people in the workplace for several years. I've worked in organisations where these Oyibo people, they'll act like they're your best friends, they'll act like they respect your boundaries. Then in a crowd in front of everybody, they'll try and humiliate you. But I see it coming because I've already done my due diligence. I've set the boundaries. But Oyibo people test the boundaries because they're not used to boundaries being set. They believe that they're operating from a position of privilege. Therefore, they don't think that any type of boundaries or rules is extended to them. That's why they test the boundaries. They test it to get it under your skin. Sometimes that is just the provocateur in them. But you have to be mindful of how you navigate work and set those boundaries. So with this new contract, people not have. I know myself. For the first 30 days, I'm not chatting. You will know I'm present because I may ask questions now and again. That's just to show you I'm engaged. Not that I'm really asking those questions. I'm just observing you. The words you use, how you relate to other people, how you construct emails. Are you the type of person that has microaggressions and macroaggressions in your emails? Are you passive aggressive? First 30 days, at least. In some organisations, it's been 3 months. I have to sit there and watch them, how they operate. Sometimes they don't even know I'm there when they're doing their madness. And they're like, oh, God, Tori, you're so quiet. We didn't know you're there. Yeah, bitch, I'm here. Hello. When you set your boundaries, you make your journey in the workplace, and I say your journey, and I mean that figuratively, easier. But it doesn't mean it won't be challenged. It will be. But if you've done your due diligence, you'll see that the challenge is coming. But in the example I've given you where I've not set my boundaries, I'm now having to mop it up. And it's getting more and more annoying to mop up. But I have to blame myself. And it's not about disrespect. It's just that people don't respect you or your time unless you put respect on your time and on yourself. And it's as simple as that. So listen, guys. Me, I'm going to love you, live you. Yeah. Let me come and be going. Yeah, I got to go. Listen, as always, I enjoy delivering these episodes to you. I love interacting with you guys. I love you guys sending me DMs and, you guys really engaging in the platform. I love the fact that you're able to use some of the learnings and teaching your siblings or colleagues, friends, anyone you think that will benefit from it. I appreciate that because if we share this knowledge, all it will do is empower people around us who are also Black women navigating the world of work and doing so successfully and doing so in order to light up the path of their success. But that path is not easy. But if the Toy Talks platform, if this podcast can make that navigating easier, that is what it's all about. Now, if you have dilemmas and you want to email those dilemmas to me, I'm getting through those dilemmas. Please email hello@toytalks.com. If you are interested in the website, what I actually do, then go on the website, www.toytalks.com, where all the information is there present. If you want to follow me on social media, my personal Instagram is Toya_Washington. The Toya Talks Instagram page is Toya_Talks. And my Twitter handle is Toya_W. And of course, Snapchat, my first love, is Toya Washington, all one word. If you're interested in the masterclasses, we have the Mother-Daughter Masterclass, CV Masterclass, Interview Skills Masterclass, and there's another one, I can't remember off the top of my head. Go ahead and have a look. The masterclasses are brilliant. The feedback has been absolutely fantastic, and I am very proud of them. I will be adding to them by the grace of God. As I mentioned before, and I think I'm going to mention up until that point, I am going to be taking a break at some point in December. And that's just so I can focus on the book that you guys know I'm writing, and also just to be kinder to myself and take some self-care. We're going to be celebrating 1 year of this podcast on the 1st of January 2021, and I cannot believe it. We're racing through the end of the year. Also as well, I shared this on my personal Instagram page, and I think the Toy Talk Instagram page as well. We're at just over 30,000 downloads. We've been operating since the 1st of January 2020. That is an achievement. The podcast has charted. You all have done that. We've charted. Top 30 episodes have been top 30, top 20, charted all over the world. I mean, Malaysia, South Africa, Australia, Ireland, the UK. We've charted literally globally. Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania. And I couldn't be more proud. And I want to thank each and every one of you for contributing to that. Also as well, I gave my Toy Talks talks last week to 4 organisations, obviously charging them. But what was important was, kind of engaging people who've never heard of the platform. And the feedback has been amazing. I covered topics, career planning, promotion planning, managing and navigating macroaggressions. I also did a presentation on understanding how race affects your ability to navigate the workplace and having really frank conversations. And I'm receiving many more inquiries from organisations wanting to engage with the Toy Talks podcast and platform. And I'm really, really proud. If your organisation is interested in being educated on Black women, Black people, and how we navigate work and how to make their workplace more diverse and inclusive, please get them to email hello@toytalks.com, direct them to the website. But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm really happy. I'm in a great space, especially when it comes to the platform, and hearing from you and how the platform has transformed your careers and your working life. And that's what it's all about. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say, have a great week. Have a great month. Remember to self-care. Take care of yourself and each other. My name is Toya Washington, and you have been listening to the Toy Talks podcast.